On the morning of Sunday, the 15th of March 2026, a heavy transport truck was carefully loaded in Gusau with a large batch of the Emir's personal belongings destined for the newly renovated palace in Ankara. To oversee the safe transit of these important items, a highly dedicated local security personnel, deeply loyal to the traditional institution, was assigned to escort the vehicle. This man was Jamilu Sarkin Lema, a courageous palace guard traditionally known as a Dogari, who had committed his life to serving the Sarkin Zamfara Ankara. Jamilu was not just a casual employee. The Dogari represent a proud, centuries-old tradition of royal protection and deeply rooted community service. He boarded the transport truck, riding alongside the civilian driver and the driver's assistant, acting as the official representative of the palace for that specific journey. The trip from Gusau to Ankara is a well-traveled route, but it cut through territories that have historically been highly vulnerable to sudden, violent incursions by armed groups operating out of the surrounding wilderness. For the majority of the journey, the truck made steady progress without any signs of danger. However, as the vehicle reached a notoriously dangerous stretch of the highway just a few kilometers outside the main limits of Ankara town, the situation took a sudden and violently tragic turn. Without any prior warning, a large group of heavily armed bandits emerged from their concealed positions in the thick brush lining the highway. These attackers, who frequently use the cover of the remote terrain to monitor road traffic, immediately identified the approaching transport truck and launched a coordinated ambush. They stepped out onto the margins of the road and opened fire sporadically, sending a hail of bullets toward the moving vehicle to force it to a violent halt. It was during this sudden, chaotic barrage of gunfire that a profound tragedy occurred. Jamilu Sarkin Lema, the brave palace guard who was simply doing his duty to oversee the royal property, was struck in the head by the incoming fire. The fatal impact was immediate, and the dedicated Dogari died instantly right there in the vehicle. The intense gunfire successfully forced the terrified driver to bring the heavy transport truck to a complete stop on the lonely stretch of highway. Once the vehicle was immobilized, the armed assailants quickly swarmed the truck. In a surprising turn of events that highlights the often unpredictable nature of these highway crimes, the attackers did not loot the vehicle or attempt to steal any of the Emir's personal belongings that were packed inside. Instead, their primary objective shifted instantly to human targets for ransom. They forcefully dragged the civilian driver and his young assistant out of the cabin and marched them at gunpoint deep into the surrounding forest, leaving the truck and the tragic scene behind. As the search and rescue operations continue intensely to locate the abducted driver and his assistant, who were taken from the scene of the Ankara highway ambush, the traditional institutions in Zamfara remain incredibly resolute. The royal houses have historically been the moral and cultural pillars of these communities, and despite the direct threats and the heartbreaking loss of their loyal staff members, they continue to work closely with the state government to advocate for peace and mobilize local intelligence gathering. The traditional rulers understand better than anyone that the fight against this deep-rooted insecurity requires a fully united front, combining the overwhelming kinetic force of the Nigerian military with the deep, granular local knowledge provided by the community members. The military command has continuously urged the residents of Zamfara to remain highly vigilant and to secretly and swiftly report any suspicious movements within their localities. The criminals who launch these highway attacks do not fall from the sky. They navigate through rural pathways, buy supplies from local markets, and rely on informants within the towns. Breaking this chain of local complicity is the only way to permanently secure the highways and guarantee the safety of every traveler. We will continue to keep a very close watch on the ongoing military clearance operations across the Zamfara highways and bring you the most accurate, deeply researched updates as they officially unfold. Until the next report, please stay incredibly safe, remain highly vigilant, and always demand the verified truth in the face of viral rumors. Entirely dependent on digital platforms and social media algorithms for their daily understanding of national events, when the digital ecosystem is constantly polluted with massive sensational lies about international interventions, secret political alliances, and imaginary diplomatic recognitions, it completely distorts their understanding of how real-world governance, real-world international law, and global diplomacy actually function. Instead of learning about the highly complex, slow-moving realities of legal appeals, constitutional arguments, and the rigorous demands of democratic institutions, they are fed a highly toxic diet of instant gratification and digital fairy tales. This creates a deeply dangerous political environment where completely unrealistic expectations are heavily fostered, and when those impossible expectations are inevitably dashed against the hard rocks of reality, it breeds a deep, dangerous level of massive political apathy and social resentment. The situation surrounding Nnamdi Kanu's highly publicized appeal from the Sokoto Correctional Facility is a perfect example of this massive disconnect. While his legal representatives are currently engaged in a highly technical, deeply complex battle over statutory interpretation, the application of repealed terrorism laws, and the fundamental constitutional rights regarding fair hearing and double jeopardy, the internet is completely busy spinning wild cinematic fantasies about sudden international rescues and completely fabricated diplomatic recognitions. We must absolutely bridge this massive gap between digital fiction and legal reality if we ever hope to build a deeply informed, highly resilient, and truly democratic society that can actually withstand the massive pressures of the modern information age. It is our collective, undeniable responsibility to aggressively challenge these viral falsehoods, constantly elevate the standard of our daily public discourse, and completely refuse to be used as mere analytical data points or financial commodities by the deeply cynical architects of digital propaganda. The absolute truth might not always be as instantly thrilling, massively viral, or emotionally satisfying as a carefully crafted internet lie, but it is the only solid, completely reliable foundation upon which we can genuinely understand our present reality and actively, intelligently build our collective future as a nation.